Hello, everyone. Very happy to be here today to do the third in our series of talks. I'm going to turn on my little slide clipper here. The first talk we did was about making a memory with a focus on the importance of meaning in using our memories. Our second talk was on memory and aging, specifically talking about what we can do to help us do better in the context of normal age changes, which we are all experiencing. That includes me. And the third talk is today's talk on making memory work. What in the world can I do? Now, it's important for you to know before we start today that you're going to be learning some memory techniques today, some memory strategies. I'm going to put you to work. And we hope that these techniques will help you to remember better. I recognize, though, that every one of you begins on a different level. We all start with different skills and abilities. Each person has different experiences with their memory. By beginning with fairly simple techniques and we're moving to harder ones toward the end, I hope to ensure that all of you can understand and benefit from this lesson, even if you have very little background in memory. But hopefully all of you have a little background from my first two talks. The goal today is not for you to be an expert memorizer. The goal is to help you to learn a little bit more that will help you succeed with your memory. It's not about 100% score. It's about each one of you learning and improving from where you are now so that you'll be able to remember more after the program is over. Now, this lesson focuses on 3 memory techniques. The first is organization and association. We talked about organization and connection cues at our first session, and association is basically a type of connection cue. Spaced retrieval, we have not talked about yet, but it's really fun. And the third thing we're going to talk about is imagery, which we did in our first lesson as well. And we're going to focus specifically on how to remember names. Okay, so you may have already used some of these techniques before. Our goal here is to give you more experience with these techniques so that you will master them and use them quickly in the future. Remember that I told you that as we get older, our minds slow down. So if you practice using these techniques, you will be faster when you need them. Okay, that's really important. So organizing means combining information into groups or categories. Words, objects, and names can be organized in many different ways. You can put things together that are similar. You can organize things according to their type or function, or find any kind of logical relationship that makes sense to you. Organization is very flexible because there are lots of different ways to do it. So you could organize your tools in your house. You could put together tools that are big, put together tools that are small, put together tools for minor repairs, put together tools for major repairs in different places. That would be a way of organizing your tools, just as a simple example. Now, one of the things that we often do is we organize by familiarity. This is very useful for someone who's moving into a new house. You may or may not be aware of this, but one of the problems with moving into a new house is a huge memory load, huge memory load. So in order to reduce that memory load when you move into a new house, you want to, as much as possible, organize things or put things in the places that you had them before. So if you had certain things in the kitchen, put them in your kitchen this time. If you had certain things in your study, put things in your study this time. I put my keys in the kitchen on a hook because that's where I have them now. I keep extra umbrellas and coats in the mudroom because that's where they are now. This method is familiarity, and you're organizing objects and their locations based on habits or routines that you have already established. So that's really helpful. Again, reduces your memory load. If you don't have a study in your new house, you can't put things in your study, but as much as possible, you want to use familiarity to help you. The most common way to organize is to organize by type or function. That is to put things together that are used in the same way, things from the same general category or type. If you had a list of things to buy at the store, you might have a hardware list, a discount house list, a grocery list. That would be a good way to organize it. Think about how you normally set up your home. Do you put dishes in the same drawer with towels? No. Do you combine hands and shoes in the same closet? No. Most of you would say no. Most people put together items of the same general type, objects that they might use together or objects that are related to the same activity. Now, one interesting way to use organization by type or function is to think about a way to plan when you travel. So you might have things in a clothing category, shirts, socks, pants. You might have personal items such as a toothbrush, a toothpaste, and a hairbrush. You may also have electronic items, which are your camera, your phone, batteries. Many people also need to bring papers, like their passport, their tickets, etc. If you want to use this organization to pack, you would first pack the clothing items, then you would pack the personal items, then you would pack the papers, then you would pack the other electronic items. Thinking about these categories as you pack may make it possible for you to avoid having to go to the store to get a toothbrush the next time you travel, which I had to do for my husband recently. Okay. And he did not have his toothbrush. All right, I'm gonna an extra one. I like that. Okay. Whoops, how do we go backwards? Sorry. I must have hit the button accidentally. Okay. So a combination of methods for organization can also help you. So if you have different shopping categories, you can organize items within that. Now, most people say to me, why would I bother to memorize my shopping list? Of course, I'll just take a list with me, right? Now, using a list is a good idea, but people often forget to take their list. Or they have a chance to go to the store one day as they're driving by and they don't have the list with them at the time. So if you organize the list at home by combining items of the same type or items from the same store aisle, chances are good that you may recall most of your list, even if you don't have it with you. In addition, it's a good mental exercise to try to memorize your shopping list. It helps to keep your mind sharp, and that's one of my things. Okay, so sometimes you can't use categories or familiarity, and you have to make some other kind of meaningful connection to remember something. When this is the case, we use association or connection cues. Sometimes they're logical, so you can think about love and caring together because they're really positive emotions if you had to remember those things. You could think about aspirin being related to orange juice if you need to buy those things in the store because they're both things you consume. Or you could even imagine using the orange juice, drinking the orange juice to take the aspirin, okay? You're making a link between those items. Now, unusual associations can also help memory. They don't have to be unusual, but it's not a bad idea to do that. Let's say that you want to remember to bring a plant to work, a spoon, applesauce, and a sandwich. The plant is a present for a friend, bringing it to work to give to her. The other items are related to your lunch, right? The spoon, the applesauce, and the sandwich. So you might think to yourself, I'm going to take that spoon, dig a hole for the plant, and feed it with applesauce and a sandwich. Now that's a little weird, it's a little unusual, but if it works, that's good. It doesn't matter how weird it is, it doesn't matter how strange it is, what matters is that it works. And it has to be meaningful to you. It has to mean something to you, okay? So our first exercise today is going to be involved asking you to make meaningful connections. This is not working as well as I hope. Okay, so we're going to study and remember pictures in this exercise. I'm going to show the pictures on the screen. Make sure that you can see the screen and you can see the screens really well because there'll be a set of pictures up there. If you are at a table with only one or two other people, you may want to move to another table because we're going to work together at the table for this exercise. So we're going to first show you the pictures and ask for you to individually remember them, okay, by yourself. And one of the things I want to warn you about is that it's going to be easier to remember these pictures if you have a label for each one, but don't obsess about the label. Like if there's a shoe, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a shoe, a boot, a loafer, whatever you want, but don't obsess about the label. When you remember it, when you use your little pad there, these little sticky note pads, to write down what you remember, just use the label that comes to mind first, okay?
Right.
No, you're going to see it, you're going to study it for 30 seconds. Then I'm going to hide the pictures and you're going to have to do them from memory, okay? So that's the individual part. The individual part is we're gonna show the picture for 30 seconds. You're going to study it for 30 seconds. You're gonna remember it on your own with whatever labels you come up with. And again, don't obsess about the labels. And then after we do it individually, we're going to work together as a table. And as a table, try to come up with the smallest number of links that will link these pictures together. So as a table, you're going to discuss the pictures, come up with associations, connections that help you to remember. And what you want as a group, when you work as a group, is to try to get as many pictures as you can in the one connection that fits them all together. Okay? Questions before I go to the pictures? Yes.
Are we supposed to write down the pictures?
You're going to, when it's memory task, you are going to write down whatever, as many pictures as you can remember using whatever label you came up with.
Pencil down, Janine.
So no pencils.
No pencils while you study.
I already thought about it.
Memory exercise, okay? Okay, I'm gonna show you the pictures. It's gonna go by very fast. You're not gonna remember them all. I promise you, unless you guys are amazing, we will not remember them all. You'll be lucky to get 5. And then we're going to work together as a table with these associations. Are we ready? Questions?
Amen.
Questions?
How many are there going to be?
I'm not telling you how many.
Oh.
Yeah. The order does not matter. You can randomly remember them. Any other questions before I put you to work? Okay, here we go. Now write down as many pictures as you can remember. Don't say it out loud, you don't want to help your neighbors.
Yeah, we haven't given.
You will. I can see that you're running out of energy. I'll give you a little more time. Okay, how many people remember more than 5? Okay, most people, that's great, okay. How many people remembered more than 8? The numbers are getting smaller. How many remembered more than 10? We have Stacy, go Stacy, and Kelly. Anybody else more than 10?
You're young.
Excellent, okay. Hey, Stacy's not the youngest person here, come on, give us credit. Okay, so now you're going to, the next step is that you're going to work together as a group to come up with associations and connections that will help you remember these 15 pictures. I'm giving you the number now. You want to get as many pictures as you can into one connection, one category or one association that gives you as many pictures as you can. Talk about it as a table. Okay, and you come up with your own things. And I want you to be able to tell me which items you collected together and why you were.
I was showing you all these. I remember. Way too much fun. What you have just done is to go through an exercise to try and form associations or connections. It's a really good exercise to help your memory. So if you have more than 5 items in one grouping, you want to report to me. Okay, in the back. How many items total did you get in one grouping? You got them all into one grouping. Okay, I'll let you report later. Is there anybody else in smaller groupings? Okay, how many did you get, Janine, in one grouping?
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Okay, so what is your groupings? What is your groupings? Things in a home. So tell me what they are. Things in a home.
Christmas tree, fork, sofa.
Christmas tree, sofa, fork, cup.
Never seen a Christmas tree in your home.
Frying pan, the TV and table.
The TV, the table,
Lamps.
card, lens.
Church.
Okay, all right, so some of you may not have called it a TV and the bed. Okay, great, all right.
Stacy has a great.
Okay, Stacy, your turn.
I forget where we're supposed to do.
Tell me what you put together into one group.
A story. A story.
Okay, Stacy made a story. That's a great method. Tell me your story. Yes, tell me your story.
We're drinking.
Sorry,
Obviously, we're drinking.
we're drinking.
At the
Okay.
table,
At the table.
which has a lazy Susan on it.
I was gonna repeat after her, if that's okay.
Which has a lazy Susan on it.
Which has a lazy Susan on it. This is the lazy Susan.
That's fine, so say that.
Other people have names for it. That's fine. Go ahead.
So you put the fork on the lazy
You
Susan.
put the fork on the lazy Susan.
After you eat, you want to read, so you need a lamp.
After you eat, you wanna read, you need a lamp.
But I can't concentrate, so I'm gonna watch TV.
So we're gonna watch TV,
But I'm gonna fall asleep.
fall asleep.
But then, of course, I wake up because I'm over 60. So I'm gonna play cards.
So she's gonna play cards,
I'm gonna actually get tired. We're gonna go to bed.
tired to go to bed.
But of course, now we wake up hungry.
Okay, so now she's hungry, she's got to probably cook something with the pan and.
Right, then I pray I don't get out of bed and actually eat the vanilla wafers.
Wait a minute, what are the vanilla wafers?
No. I know that.
You're adding vanilla wafers, okay.
But then, so I pray, so I go to church to pray.
You go to the church to pray,
Won't eat.
so you won't eat too much.
But clearly I want to celebrate Christmas because it's so pretty,
Okay,
right? And if I could celebrate Christmas, it would be like a fairy tale. So I live in a castle like a princess.
okay, so she wants to celebrate Christmas, and if it's special, she stays in the castle. Okay,
And then of course.
that's great, that's great. One thing I will say about your story, it's a little bit, lots of different small pieces. And it would have been better if it was more connected, each of those pieces, because it seems, it might be hard. Well, that's the thing, it might be hard for somebody else.
She's a story.
It might be hard for somebody else. In the back, what is your way of connecting all to the teams?
Back here, we saw the castle, and the church home, and our home, we thought that was important.
Okay, that's fine. The castle and the barn is your homes,
That go to your home,
and all the things go into your home.
and then we said our activities, we liked to go outside, we thought that was Saturn,
Okay, so we like to look at Saturn,
then, playing cards
and play cards, that's another activity. Okay,
and the trees were outside.
and the trees were outside too, so they go outside to do various activities. Okay, great. Okay, so most of it is things inside your home, which makes sense. That's the way this list was constructed. So that a lot of these are things you do inside your home, you see inside your home, so you can get a lot of them into that one category. And you notice, people have different labels for these, that's why I told you not to obsess about the labels. This one in the top right, it's always fascinating.
Yeah.
This is the first time it was a lazy Susan. I've had it be, I've had it be a planet, I've had it be an egg.
Oh, egg.
I've had it be a hat. So anyway, okay.
Diagram.
What's that?
Diagram.
Giant frame, okay. Okay, there are no names here, so it's okay for it to be a diagram. All right, so now we're going on to a second memory technique. That was our first memory technique. We're going on to our second memory technique, which is spaced retrieval. And spaced retrieval is not in your workbook, but what I just did with organization and association is in the workbook you'll get from me today, from the Everyday Memory Clinic workbook. So one of the most important things you can do to maintain a memory is to continue to review it on a regular basis. And the best way to review is to pull the items out of your own memory. That's right. If you have the information written down, do not read it again, but try to retrieve it from your own memory. Students often study for exams by reading and rereading the textbook or reading over lecture notes many times. Actually, rereading is not as good as recalling, and there's lots of research showing this. So you want to, wait a minute, you want to recall the specific memory again yourself without rereading. There's a much better way, that's a much better way to retain information for a long period of time. And we call this method spaced retrieval. Retrieval or recall repeatedly over spaced out time. Let's say that you have a specific item that you want to retain, perhaps a grandchild's birth date, or a PIN number or passcode. You can write it down in a special place, but you may want to be able to remember it without using a note. Spaced retrieval means that you should think about that date or number or passcode again and again. If possible, do not look again at your note. Just think about the information regularly using your own memory to bring it to mind. Now, this is a good way to remember names of people after you meet them. You say the name to yourself, you make conversation, then you say the name again to yourself, you make some more conversation, you say the name again to yourself, you make some more conversation, you may even say the name out loud, so like, it's really nice to meet you, Jane, and then, continue talking to them, and in the back of your mind, the name is being repeated over time intervals. I do this all the time. Okay. This helps to lock the name into your memory until you have a chance, if it's really important to you, to write it down. If it's not that important, don't write it down, but it will still make it more likely that you will remember it if you go through space retrieval. So the most important aspects are that you use your own memory to bring the item to mind, and you do that repeatedly over time. Okay, so anyone can use this technique, but you want to use it only with relatively small pieces of information. Passwords, PIN numbers, 3 or 4 steps, you need to use a specific app on your cell phone, brief medical instructions, something short. It probably works best to have someone actually help you by using a timer and say, okay, we'll call it now, and we're gonna practice that today. But you don't have to do that. You can do it yourself as long as the intervals get longer and longer. You don't want to do it every minute, every second, and then have it and not wait. You want to wait, make the time intervals a little bit longer. One of the cool things about space retrieval is that you don't have to have a lot of memory ability to make it work. This technique has been used by caregivers with Alzheimer's patients. You can teach a very small piece of information to an Alzheimer's patient using this technique, like they need to know their doctor's name, or they need to know a phone number, how to call home. Now, if a person has a memory loss, it's going to take more repetition, it's going to take more practice. And in here, we're going to practice one code number. I'm going to try to get you to remember, but, and I've done this with other people, it works extremely well. But with an Alzheimer's patient, you might have to do the exercise that we're going to do today 4 or 5 times in a row on different days before they will get it, or it might even take 10 days. But there is research showing that with someone who has minimal memory ability, this technique can actually be very effective. And you want to start with a dementia patient, especially, you want to start with very small time intervals. We're gonna start with 5 seconds today and go to 15 seconds, but you would want with a dementia patient to increase the time interval much less quickly. So 5 seconds, 7 seconds, 9 seconds, 11 seconds is when you would want to test, okay? So you want to make the time intervals larger as you go, preferably with someone who has good memory ability, double the time intervals over time, and I'll give you an example in a minute. And this method can be used to remember anything, even if it has no meaning at all. And that's one of the other cool things about this technique is I've talked about meaning a lot in here. We've used meaning a lot, but this technique can be used to remember something that has no meaning. And that's very powerful for this. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example from my own experience. On the way out to dinner one night, my husband said to me, that my husband, most of you have seen him, I would like to know my license plate number. I have really tried, but I cannot remember it. My response was, if you really want to learn it, I can teach it to you. Beware. And he was skeptical, but we both looked at his license number as we got into the car. It was HYZ 604. I said to him, say it out loud, his 604. He did. 6 seconds. Then I told him to try and remember it, and I asked him to say it out loud again, which he did 15 seconds later. Then I said that I was applying a very effective method for learning specific things. I asked for the license plate number again at 30 seconds, and he repeated his 604. I explained further that this technique works with anyone, even if memory impaired individuals. I asked again, and he repeated correctly 1 minute later. We then arrived at the restaurant and walked inside. While looking at the menu, I asked for the number again and again over longer time intervals. Finally, he had recalled the license plate number correctly 9 times over 16 minutes. And I said, you probably know it now. And in fact, he did. He never forgot it. And I asked him after dinner, and he still knew the number. And after that, he knew it for as long as he had that license plate number. I'm not giving you his license plate number because he's a different one now. But the point is that he remembered it, and I know it because I told this story 3 or 4 times. So I'm never going to forget it either. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. Here's the process. I'm gonna tell you the process and then we're going to have you guys go through the process. Okay, you look or hear the to be remembered item first. And I'm going to tell you that each of you has it on a piece of paper on your table. There's a little tiny piece of paper. You can pass it around and look at it. I want you to focus on listening to me right now, but everybody should look at it. And if you want to write it down on your own piece of paper, that would be fine. Okay, you repeat it immediately after you've heard it. Then at 5 seconds and 15 seconds. Then you start doubling the time intervals. You do it at 30 seconds, 1 minute, etc. And if you really want to make sure you have it, you can do it again at 30 minutes, 1 hour, or 2 hours for the next day. And between these different recalls, you want to do a normal activity. So what I'm going to do in here is I'm actually going to play some music. And one of the reasons for doing that is that in normal life, there are things going around. There are noises around you, there are people talking. And when I did this with my husband, I was telling him about this technique. But what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to play some music. And this music is going to serve as a distraction, a normal kind of distraction. And when you do this technique at home, if you practice it at home, if you forget, like you forget at 8 minutes or you forget at 6 minutes or whatever, you want to look at the piece of paper again and then go back to shorter time intervals. You want to repeat it immediately, then maybe at 10 seconds, 20 seconds, and then go up to higher and higher intervals slowly to get it, okay? So what we're going to do in here, I've given you at each table a 5-letter number code. And that is what you want to remember using spaced retrieval. I'm going to do the timer, but you as an individual want to recall the code. So what's going to happen is I'm going to say the code. And you're going to either say it to yourself or you're going to say it out loud. Okay, you can say it to yourself, you can say it out loud, the room can get noisy, it's okay. One person is timing, that's me. And I'm going to say the code when the time comes. And then just reminding you, I'm going to have a distraction. And this is important because if you're going to do this in everyday life when you're talking to somebody, you have a distraction because you're having a conversation with them. If you want to try to remember a name in everyday life, there's going to be background noise. So this is why we have distraction here. The technique works better if you have a distraction because otherwise you can just sit there and say the number over and over and over and over and over in your head for 10 minutes. And that's really not what this technique is about. Okay. It's really about retrieving it from your own mind, then waiting, then retrieving it again, then waiting, then retrieving it again. Okay. Now, has everybody had a chance to look at the piece of paper? Okay. All right, so we all have different pieces of paper. I'm going to start my music. I'm sorry if you don't like my music choices. So the way it is. My music choices are my music choices.
Baby Shark?
Yeah. No, not Baby Shark. No, not Baby Shark. Sarah Bareilles is one of my favorites. So we're going to listen to Sarah Bareilles Radio. All right. That's as loud as it can be. Okay. Let me put it on a chair here in the middle. So if most people can hear it. Okay. So I'm going to do the timer. And I'm going to get my timer started here.
This is a test for your hearing.
This is not a test for your hearing. Okay. All right. So everybody look at the number, say it to yourself now. I could sing, but that would really distract you. Okay. Say it again to yourself or out loud. Say it again to yourself or out loud.
This is one of my favorite Cerebral songs, by the way. Okay, say the code again. Don't say it in between, just listen to me, listen to music, whatever. We're just having a little exercise here, a memory exercise. And the code is not important, but I promise you, if the code was personally important, you would really do even better. Okay, now I want you to say the code again. If you need to look at it again because you forgot it, go ahead and look at it again. But we're up to 1 minute now. We've done a 1 minute retrieval on this code. So you've already remembered it at 5 seconds, at 15 seconds, at 30 seconds, and 1 minute. Our next interval is going to be 2 minutes. Okay, so at 2 minutes, we're going to ask you to say the code again. And we'll see if you got it. It's only 5 digits. It's like a passcode or a password or a PIN. Okay. So at 2 minutes, we're going to ask you to remember it again. And by that time, maybe there'll be a different song playing, and maybe you can hear it better. That one's a very quiet song. But I let Pandora pick the song. Okay. So clearly I should have started singing. Okay. Say the code. Everybody got it? Yes. Everybody got it? Okay. All right. Now the real question is whether or not you remembered in 15 minutes. But normally we just did a 2 minute recall. So normally I would do it again in 4 minutes. I would do it in 8 minutes and then in 16 minutes. Now most people who have a good memory will have it by the time they've done it at 16 minutes. Because they will have remembered it out of their own heads 9 times over 16 minutes. Now, I want to remind you that the first couple of time intervals are very, very short. If you remember when I was talking, I think it was in January, I mentioned the concept of immediate memory. And I said that even if we have when we have normal age changes, we still can remember things from immediate memory. And immediate memory holds things for 30 seconds to a minute, right? That's what I said. So think about how many times we repeated that in that immediate memory time. We did it at 5 seconds, we did it at 15 seconds, we did it at 30 seconds, we did it at 1 minute. So that's 4 times in that immediate memory, which usually does not disappear with aging. So that's why it supports normal memory, even though it's not intended specifically as an age-related memory exercise, but there's a lot of research to show that it can be very effectively used to teach one specific small amount of information to people. And this doesn't make any sense. It's not meaningful. It's just a bunch of letters and numbers. It could be a longer set of letters and numbers, like a passcode. It doesn't matter. But if you really want to learn something like that, your motivation adds to your interest in doing it. And this technique guarantees that you do it. Say the code. Okay, that's 4 minutes. Now, if we're really going to work, I'm not going to do 8 minutes and 16 minutes, but if we're really going to prove that it works, we would do 8 minutes, 15, 16 minutes, 30 minutes, space it out over time. Questions? Anybody have questions? Yes, no.
It's not just a question, it helps me to have a visual concept. If somebody orally tells me their name, I may not remember that, but
Okay, so visual helps you, yeah. Try to write the name across the face. In your mind.
okay.
Don't get a marker out.
I'm sorry.
Just write the name across the face. Debbie.
Both Connie and I are nurses, and immediately we picked up on physical therapy of 125.
PT, yes, PT 125. I wondered if that would work for somebody, because there was a PT in there. There was also an LP in there, if you know what record used to be called LPs, okay? So there were little hints in there that made it easier. I didn't want to make it too hard for you guys, but it works. And you may find when you go to lunch today that you still remember that stupid code. Okay.
So now we're doing our last technique, which is imagery. I did talk about imagery the very first day I was here. And we're going to learn a very specific and complicated, actually, memory strategy. The focus of this lesson is mental imagery. Imagery can be used for many different things. It's considered to be a very powerful memory technique. And we're just doing the intro now. Some people find it difficult to formulate a detailed image. The more detailed an image is, the easier it is to remember. So I'm going to start with a simple exercise for you to kind of test yourself to see how good you are at doing mental imagery. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to close your eyes and try to imagine the front of your house or building that you live in an apartment. Keep your eyes closed and think about what it looks like when you drive in or when you walk up to your place. Think about what color the building is. Try to make your picture very clear. Can you see windows on the front of the building? Are there any trees or shrubs in the yard in front of the building? Now try to add some other sensory information. Can you hear the leaves crinkle as you drive in or walk in? Are there birds chirping nearby? After you have this image in your mind, see if you can imagine yourself standing somewhere in this picture, on the front porch, by a tree, in the window. Okay? If you're having difficulty with this image, open your eyes for a little bit, then close and try again. So you want to imagine the front of your house. You want to imagine yourself at the front of your house and try to see what is there in the front of your house. Hear the noises around you. Okay, open your eyes. Some of you may have found that difficult. People vary in their ability to use imagery. If that was easy for you, then you would have great success with using imagery as a tool for your memory. Because if you can do that, you can develop other kinds of images that would be helpful for you to remember. Now, imagery is considered to be the most powerful technique. And I think that I may have mentioned to you in December that there are books on memory that don't talk about anything but imagery, just imagery, 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 imagery. That's because it works very well if it's something that is easy for you to do. And on the basis of this practice exercise, you should now know if this is something that's easy for you to do. It's not easy for me. It's not easy for me. It's a little bit difficult for me. I'm much more of a word person than I am a picture person. But imagery can be used for a lot of different things. It can be used to remember names, shopping lists, and where you put things in your house. So for remembering where you put things, you want to first pay attention. Remember, I talked about that in December. Pay attention to where you put things. Secondly, you try to put things in a logical place. So the pen and paper go in the study or the kitchen near your kitchen desk. Wet boots and umbrella go in the laundry room or mudroom. Teapot and cups in the kitchen. Even when you use a logical place, you are more likely to remember an object's location if you make a visual picture for yourself of the object in its location. And I mentioned this before, it's extremely helpful to do this if you are one of those people who tends to walk around your house and put things down. Put your keys down, put your glasses down, put your purse down, and then you don't know where they are. Take 1 second to make a picture of where you have put it. 1 second. And really pay attention to that picture. Okay. So we want to use particularly distinctive, large, and clear images. Those are better. If you can make a big picture of your purse on the kitchen table in your mind, that will help you to remember it. The more distinctive it is, the better. We also talked about making images in December. We talked about making them interactive. That is, imagine movement in them if you can. Okay. To recall that you've left your watch in the bathroom, which you don't normally do, you could imagine the watch going down your bathtub drain. That would be very sad. That would make you unhappy, but it would be very memorable. Okay. To recall that you've left your lighter in the living room, imagine the lighter starting a fire in your living room. Okay. Very scary, but very effective image. Visual images You want large, clear, definitive, you want to use all your senses and include those in the image, you want to include action in the image. You want to review your images if necessary, if you need one for long-term, like for a name. Try to increase the distinctiveness of the image, make it more active, more brightly colored, add more sensory cues to make it more vivid. If it stands out clearly in your mind, you are more likely to recall it. You want to review your images. This is one of the things that people don't do with names. They might figure out an image that helps them remember the name, but then they don't review it. So they create an idea that might help them to remember a name, but then they don't review it. So they imagine somebody with a crown on their head as an image, but then they don't review, oh, the name is king, the name is not queen, the name is not crown, right? That's why you have to review it, so that you know what the picture means or what the picture should mean, okay? Okay, so the important thing is that it has to mean something to you. You have to find the image that works for you, you have to find the meaning that works for you with an object location task or with a name. It has to be meaningful to you. And so Stacy came up with this very elaborate thing for remembering all those objects. It worked for her, okay? It wouldn't work for me, but that's okay. It doesn't have to work for me. It only has to work for her because she's the one who's using it. Okay, so the most difficult memory task to do is remembering names. Names are very hard to remember, and there's actually been a huge amount of research to show that names are more difficult than other things. When I do memory training classes, what I'm always asked for is teach me something that will help me remember names. It's like the first thing people ask. So there are many reasons why it's difficult. First, when we get introduced to somebody, we don't pay attention. That's a deal breaker. We tend to think about what we're wearing or what we're going to say to the person, you know. Most names are not meaningful. What does George mean? What does Harry mean? What does Johnson mean? How about Carlisle? What are you going to do with those? Okay. It's difficult to identify meaning for those names. In addition, people's names rarely are associated with their appearance. That means that when we see the person again, we might say, oh, I've seen that person, but nothing about his or her face is likely to cue you to recall the name. So the key to remembering names is to make them meaningful and associate the name with the person, okay? This can be done with mental imagery, and the name of the technique is the image name match method. Okay, it has several steps. Let me go through the steps. The first step is to identify and use a prominent feature. So think about what the person looks like. Do you notice their hair? Do you notice their lips? Do you notice their nose? Do you notice their eyes? What do you notice? If you can't identify a prominent feature, you can still have a visual image of the whole face, but it really helps if you can identify a prominent feature and then exaggerate that prominent feature in your mind. So that, you know, I have small eyes. You can think of my eyes as little dots, you know, really small, because I have small eyes, okay? You want to exaggerate it. If the eyes seem to be deep set, then imagine them even darker, okay? If the person has a prominent chin, make it huge in your mental image, okay? And you may know what your most prominent feature is, or you may get offended if people tell you what your most prominent anyway, and that can happen. But the second step is to pick what's called a name object. Now, I did this with you in December. My name object is a bird on the west end of a weather vane. And I put my whole face on it. But if I was doing this technique, I would take the bird and put it on my prominent feature, not just the whole face, but on my prominent feature. Imagine this name object with the prominent feature. So one of the things that I usually do is I remember Ken as a name object of a can. For Barbara, it's a Barbie. Jean would be blue jeans. This can take some creative thinking. Bagwell becomes a bag dipping into a well. And Lukowski becomes a lucky cow in the sky. You have to think of some kind of weird object that connects to the name. Okay? Then the next step is that you imagine the face with the name object next to the prominent feature. So if Ken is a can, and Ken's prominent feature is his very thick glasses, then you imagine a can in his very thick glasses, okay? You imagine the face with the name object next to the prominent feature. You don't have to exaggerate it. Sometimes you can use a whole picture of the face and just put that object there. That's fine. Fourth step, and this is a step that I invented. I have not seen it in any of these other books, but I do think it really helps. Evaluate the image. Is it sad? Is it funny? Is it angry? Is it disgusting? Is it mean? Hopefully not, but that can happen because that might be the only thing that works. I had a woman at the Vegas Girl, she's not a member there anymore. I think she may have left town or passed away. She had a last name of Dent.
D-E-N-T?
D-E-N-T. And she had very uneven teeth. So you can imagine. And I only did this because I could not remember her name. Now, normally I don't use this technique unless I really have trouble remembering a specific name. Because for me, images are hard. But it actually worked really well. And it was kind of mean, right? But it worked. And then I never forgot her again. So the last step you do is to review the image and how it connects to the name. Again, you don't want to accidentally use the wrong name. So Stacey Goldring has beautiful blonde hair. Goldring is easy. I would put gold rings on in her hair in my image. Beautiful gold rings, right? But then you have to review it. You have to make sure you don't call her Stacey Gold or Stacey Ring, right? You have to think about how the name connects to the image, review it in your mind so that you can get it, okay? Now, this technique has been mastered by somebody called Jerry Lucas, who used to go on the Tonight Show, and he would memorize 100 people in the studio audience using this technique. He did this by first memorizing a set of standard name objects to go with common names. Jane and James were always chains. Jean was always blue jeans. Carol was always a Christmas caroler. Mary was a bridal veil. Gordon was a garden. Robert was always a masked robber. Mike was a microphone. Frank was a hot dog. Peter was a rabbit. Dolly was a rag doll. Bill was a dollar bill. Mona was money. Okay, he had these all memorized ahead of time. So then all he had to do was to look at the face and throw the object on the face in his mind. And he was amazing, okay? He was amazing. The process was faster for him because he had this built up knowledge base of all these names. If you memorize a set of name objects for common names, you don't have to do it, but if you do, you can easily bring to mind the name that goes with the object you have for a specific face. Okay, so here's the steps again. You find a prominent feature, exaggerate if you can, not required. Pick your name object that goes with the name. Imagine the face with the name object connected to that feature in some way. I told you we had gold rings in Stacey's hair. Evaluate the image. Does it make you happy, angry, sad? That emotional connection is actually very powerful for memory. Then you review the image with the name in mind. So we're going to do a practice exercise with image name match method. One of the things I want to say to you before you start doing this is that it's a complex method. Obviously, it has these 5 steps, but it can be very powerful if it works for you. So what I'd like you to do is to identify, and I know that many of you know each other, so it may not be a difficult name for you to know, but go through the process anyway. So think about, for the names that you pick for your table, I would like 2 names of each table picked to work on. And for those names, come up with what's the prominent feature, what's the name object, how does it make you feel? Come up with that process for those 2 names at your table. And it can be 2 people sitting at the table, or it can be 2 names that are movie stars, I don't care. The point is, I want you to go through the process with 2 names in your group, okay? And this is the process, okay? So pick 2 names, and go through the process as a group. And you can talk about it and see where we're together. Whenever you can do the first name or the last name. If the last name is easier, the first name is easier, to do their name. I love
So imagine how they I'm gonna stop you because we're getting way over time here. Would anyone like to share what they did at their table, one thing at their table? Would anyone like to share one thing from their table? Ladies in the back, would you come together, please? Other folk, okay, go ahead. Janine is gonna share.
All right, so
Jessica is a new friend. So we used Jessica, we felt that would be the hardest to remember, so we applied your criteria. But we asked her to, as far as a description of herself. And she, as a child, her parents related her, said Jessie, Bessie Jessie. So that was a cue starting. And then I know her as a professional. So I kind of use that context, the professional Jessica, who to me would never be messy, she was very put together.
So there's an opposite in there.
There's an opposite in there. And then, an appearance, you know, again, we focus a lot on the hair. So we won't forget when she walks in a room, the blonde hair, and she don't change the color. Right, but what's interesting to Kim, and I want, Kim to explain, because she's an artist, and I want you to do when you see an image of what you.
What I do when I'm creating, I intentionally exaggerate something to create focus in my paintings. So.
Okay, Marlene, you had your hand raised. Do you want to do one back there?
Okay, I'll bring in the microphone.
We did chapel run. Yes. Well, she went to church, went to the chapel, and then was about that. The red hair was flaming and curly, and she rode on a horse to get to the chapel, and it's a run. So that's how we knew that it was chapel run. Yeah. We loved it.
That was a great example, yes.
Okay, we have to.
Okay, well, I'm not gonna do it because we're running out of time.
Let me do one. You can tell everybody on lunch. Okay, so I just want to remind you that the image name match method is very powerful if you use it effectively. It is helpful even if it's incomplete. That is, you don't have to do all 5 steps. We did a research project with this, and we found that even those people who only used a couple of the steps actually significantly improved their name memory. So if you're not comfortable with doing all the steps, do as many as you can, and this will help you to more likely to remember the name than otherwise. There are many other options for remembering names, and in my workbook, which you're going to get in a minute, these other options are all laid out because it is very, very helpful to do other techniques if you're not comfortable with imagery. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to show you before you get the workbook, we did research with hundreds of people. We randomly assigned some people to a control group, and those people just took lots of memory tests, week 1, week 5, week 9. We had a second group that did the workbook on their own, at home, doing the lessons themselves. We called that the self-help group. We had a third group who came into a group class like this, where we read the exact same instructions that I've been reading to you to every one of those groups. And then we compared the results at week 1, week 5, and week 9. And one thing that happens in memory training research is that people always improve when they're repeatedly tested. So test 1 is not as good as test 2, and test 2 is not as good as test 3, and that always happens. So if you have significant gains in your memory, that is over and above what you would gain from just practice testing. Okay, important to know that just practice testing helps your memory. The results we got were amazing. We got significant improvements in name recall, significant improvements in story recall, which is also an exercise in the workbook. And people really enjoyed doing the group activity. But interestingly, in the self-help group, we had the highest dropout rate because people don't like doing it on their own. It's more fun in a group, but I promise you, if you stick to it and you do the exercises on your own, it's a 6-week course of recommendations in the book.
you will significantly improve your memory. And what's more important, and this is where I need my LED, which is not working. But over here, what we found is that those people who did it on their own had a huge gain in confidence about their own ability to improve their own memory. That's what this shows, huge gain, okay? So it's really, really valuable to go through these self-help training programs if you're willing to invest into it. And I recommend that you do one lesson each week. Don't overwhelm yourself and try to do multiple lessons. The book has 6 lessons in it, some of which we covered today, so they'll be very familiar to you when you do it. But I hope that you benefit from using the workbook. And we can pass on that.
Is that chart right on the right, something like the seed control group? It says,
Yeah, you
they
get,
better on the.
you gain more in thinking that you.
Look at the control, the light blue is
Yeah.
higher.
Yeah, they're lower, because all we did was test them. We tested and tested and tested, and they're actually less confident afterwards. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so I am finished. Are there any questions? What questions? No.
I do have a comment. When you were talking about packing, I'm going on a long trip.
Right.
And my husband keeps saying, remember this, remember that, remember this. But just this morning, my 10-year-old grandson called me up and he said, Grandma, I have 4 pairs of glasses from last time you were here. I have your long black shirt. And he gathered it all up after I left last time when I left everything
Okay,
there.
so she's-
helps with my packing.
She packed a lot of stuff, which she left at her grandma's house. So you need to go through your whole, mental exercise when you leave, when you go home as well, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rob.